Lauren Sivan, who is a journalist in Los Angeles, is joining me to talk about some of what's going on in the country right now in regard to sexual harassment, sexual assault. She is an incredible reporter, but more importantly, she is one of the courageous women who came forward when the Harvey Weinstein story broke, and she shared about her pretty horrible experience with him back in 2007, I believe. And I say it's courageous because, first of all, a lot of times when women come forward and they share their experiences in similar instances, especially when it comes to a man with power, they're usually met with, it goes beyond skepticism. They're met with brutal language, even more degrading treatment. And it was so important for that story to break because it opened the floodgates and made a lot of other women feel comfortable coming forward. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining me.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, I really don't want her to have to get into the details again, but I want to quickly summarize what he did. This happened back in 2007 at Cipriani, which is a pretty famous restaurant in Manhattan. She was with Harvey Weinstein. He was showing her around the restaurant, and at a different restaurant, I apologize. At this point, it was like a Cuban restaurant.
Yeah,
something like that.
Socialista, which is now closed, but
right.
Yeah.
And so at one point, he corners her into a back of the restaurant area, and tries to make a move on you. And Lauren, you told him, "No, I have a boyfriend." And at that point, he tells you to just shut up and watch. And then he pulls his penis out and masturbates in front of you.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
Unbelievable. So that's what you went through. And what I'm curious about is, what was the reaction that you got following the publication of all these allegations, including yours?
You mean now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I came out initially because that New York Times story came out with Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan, who bravely came out against him. And I was so proud of them for doing that. And I thought, oh good, finally, people are gonna see what he's like. And then he came out with a ridiculous apology, calling them liars, basically, going on some political rant. I didn't even understand what he was talking about. And that made me furious because I knew what kind of guy he was based on that encounter I had with him 10 years prior. So that's why I decided to come out publicly. And it was definitely scary. I didn't sleep the whole night before I knew it was gonna be published because I still wasn't sure if I should even attach my name to it. I was, as a woman, it's like, what do you have to gain from this? And then for the rest of your life, anytime someone Googles your name, this is what's gonna come up, and you don't wanna be forever known as the potted plant girl or something.
Oh my God, and not only that, I mean, did you worry about the reaction to it? Because I think about women in college who come forward saying that they've been raped or sexually assaulted, and a lot of them are dragged through the mud. And I wonder if you had any of those fears before that story was published, like that night when you couldn't sleep.
Well, yeah, I did. I did have some of those fears. And I thought that people would think, well, what's her agenda? What's her angle? Why is she doing this? And that was the thing. That was kind of why I came forward. I didn't have an agenda. I didn't want anything from Harvey Weinstein. I didn't want to sue him. I didn't want money. I didn't want to be in a movie, nothing. So I felt like perhaps my voice could validate their voices because I didn't work in the industry and I didn't have to work with him like they did. And the reaction, I want to say like 90% positive. 90% of women saying, wow, thank you for telling your story and sharing their own stories with me. As with anything, I mean, there are plenty of people like trolling online who will say, you kept quiet for 10 years and you could have helped someone else, which just frankly isn't true, number one. And number two, that's what we need to change, this victim blaming, this victim shaming culture, because that's exactly why people don't come out. I mean, if I came out when it happened, they would be like, oh, you're overreacting and it's Harvey Weinstein, so good luck.
Oh,
and then when you do come out, they say, well, what took you so long? I mean, you can't win.
I want to get to that. The question of why it takes people so long to come forward. So it was reported, and unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to cover this story until now, and I think it's really important to discuss it. It was reported that Harvey Weinstein would hire opposition researchers. I mean, very prominent opposition researchers to start spying on the accusers. And then he would try to push for a smear campaign to take away any credibility that these women might have, and to, again, drag them through the mud. And the reason why we know about that is because Ronan Farrow spoke very candidly about who he hired and what he planned on doing. And so the companies, the firms included Kroll, one of the largest corporate intelligence companies, and Black Cube, an enterprise run largely by former officers of Mossad and other Israeli intelligence agencies. So it was also becoming increasingly obvious that this was going on because Rose McGowan was like noticing that people were asking her very personal questions and following her around. And it turned out that some of these people ended up being spies and oppo researchers. And so, yeah, I mean, at least my take is that any person who is not in a position of power would be fearful that they would be, followed around and smeared, and their name would be completely destroyed, even though they're the victims.
And we saw it with the Italian actress and model who actually had evidence, who had a recording, an audio recording of him, relentlessly dragging her into his hotel room, and yet, nothing was done about that. And then he had, journalists at the New York Post. Write articles basically smearing her, saying, oh, she's accusing him of what? Like, she showed up at his party, she did this, she did that, and insinuating that she was a liar and trying to get something out of him. So why would anyone have ever come forward? I mean, there was no winning. And then if you had to work in that industry, if you had to work with him, I mean, just imagine having to deal with this guy, having, Daryl Hannah said she was moving a bureau in front of her hotel room door to keep him out. Wow. And when she complained about it, she was taken off the press tour. I mean, just imagine. So before right now, there was no upside to coming forward with your story. It was something that you had to keep a secret, deal with, and then do this weird tap dance with this person if you still had to work with him, to be polite and try just not to be alone with them. I mean, women shouldn't have to deal with that, especially in the workplace.
And you did have to deal with him. You didn't have to necessarily communicate with him, but you would have to see him around following that pretty terrible encounter.
Well, when I came to Hollywood, I would cover red carpet events all the time. So he would oftentimes be on the red carpet because a lot of his movies get nominated. And I just, I would try my best to never have to interview him or to pretend I didn't see him if he went by. And I think I did once have to talk to him at a red carpet years ago, and he had no idea who I was. I mean, he didn't show any recognition, which I was grateful for, by the way.
But it's telling, right?
Yeah,
it's telling because I think you were on Megyn Kelly's show when you said this, that made it abundantly clear that you were not the only victim.
Oh yeah,
that there had been many others.
Oh yeah, I knew that night that this goes on all the time because. It was like less than an hour from meeting him, a stranger, to having him expose himself. I mean, you do the math over 30 years, how many encounters he must have had with women that he would never see again or that he did see again. I mean, there are thousands, there have to be.
Yeah, right now there probably are more that I don't know about, but the latest number that I read was 80 women accusing him of sexual harassment, sexual assault. Now, I wanna kind of wrap up the conversation by talking about the culture, because this is not simply a Harvey Weinstein problem. This is not an isolated incident. As you guys know, this has now transferred on to other professions, other industries.
Sure.
And in my opinion, this shows that there is a cultural issue here. And it's not a cultural issue saying that, oh, all men, they need to be talked to, and no, it shows that there are people in positions of power who will abuse that power. And they get away with it. They've gotten away with it for a long, long time. And I want to get your sense of what the future holds. Do you think that, opening up the floodgates is really going to lead to change, or is this, just the hot story for the moment and then people will lose interest?
I hope not. I hope that real change comes, and I want to make it as specific as we possibly can over what that change should look and could look like, because as great as it is to hear all these stories in the Me Too campaign, if everything stays the way it will, then nothing will change. I think at the very least, now that so many people have come forward, I think women will be much more, they'll call it out right when it happens in real time, right when they see it. They're no longer gonna have that terrified fear that either no one will believe them or they'll be, shut up or smeared or anything like that. I think that's made it more comfortable for women to come forward. The other thing I think is this idea that the rich and the powerful can pay their way out of trouble. That needs to end. The non-disclosure agreements is something that I think needs to end when it comes to sexual harassment. To pay off a victim because of your egregious behavior and then to continue that behavior because she can no longer speak about it, that has to end. Because in many of these cases, as you brought up, we're not just talking about an off-color comment. We're talking about assault. We're talking about rape. Those are felonies. Those are crimes. They should not be covered up.
Yeah, yes, that's a great point. I totally agree with you.
Watch the Young Turks commercial-free. Download it or stream it. Watch it any way you like at tytnetwork.com/join.